I'm Geoff Dabelko, the Woodrow Wilson Center in Washington. It's day 2 here in Oslo, Norway, of the Global Environmental Change and Human Security Conference, GECS conference. And it's really a 10-year capstone on the project. 10 years ago, the project was in part started because in the realm of environment security, there was a very heavy focus, some would say too heavy a focus, and I'd include myself in that, in trying to parse out what environment natural resource connections to violent conflict were. It's a fairly narrow question, a high threshold of violence, and looking for what were direct or indirect contributions. An important question, but one that in fact for about a decade the academic community and to some degree the policy community was stuck on. And so yesterday I was very fortunate to chair a panel that was entitled Environment, Conflict, and War-Torn Societies. And there were a couple interesting factors, things that panel really represented. It had Ken Conca from the University of Maryland, David Jensen from the UN Environment Program's Post-Conflict and Disaster Branch, and Arve Ofstad from NORAD, the Norwegian Development Agency. And I think a couple of things. One is that we actually do know a fair bit about environmental contributions to conflict. But in fact, there's so much more that we have been able to focus on where natural resources are critical all along a conflict continuum. So for example, David Jensen's very office, he and his colleagues, focusing on, in many ways, a broad notion of post-conflict, but understanding that the focus is not exclusively on how natural resources contribute to starting a conflict, but how those natural resources and how the negotiations for terminating a conflict are so critical to whether it becomes a sustainable peace, to assessing the environmental damage in a post-conflict setting, understanding where there are hotspots that need to be remediated right away, but also understanding building some of those capacities around managing environment in ways that both lead to a sustainable use of resources, address fundamental livelihoods, and really build the foundation for a sustainable peace, often sometimes using environmental management as a way to build trust and confidence among the former adversaries. And then also suggests a larger point that the GECS program, the Global Environmental Change and Human Security Program, was starting in '99 and pursuing throughout the last decade, which was our specific focus on higher levels of organized violence, misses an awful lot of where natural resources are critical to vulnerabilities of large populations. And so we need to understand that the governance or the lack of governance or the inequitable governance and control of natural resources can actually pose a tremendous source of insecurity for a much, in fact, larger set of people. And so understanding it in a human security frame where individual and human well-being was a kind of relevant focus area could be additionally productive and broaden out the set of questions and make this whole set of inquiry around how natural resources were relevant to human security a more productive and robust field. It meant that it went in a lot of different directions. It became a broader field, less focused, with more methodological pluralism, but one that ultimately had more to say for a larger part of the world. And so in that way, this panel was reflective of some of what I think have been positive trends over the last 10 years, both in the research side and in the policy development side, and bringing some of these really vexing questions under some of the same umbrellas so that the connections could be better seen and better addressed. So that's a reflection on day 2 here in Oslo, one that was quite productive in many other ways as well, and urge you to come to the Wilson Center website and the GECS website for more details.